very, very good evening. A warm welcome from myself, Dan Nicholl, and from Alan Committie this evening. The second episode of Two Full Tossers, brought to you for the first time by the Trevor Quirk Centre for Bikram Yoga. And we're very excited to have them on as sponsors. Trevor has been a glowing endorsement for good health and fine living over the course of the last 90 to 93 years. It's been a very, very big week, although let's look at the things that haven't happened in the last week, Mr. Committie. We haven't seen Graham Smith become a dad again in the last week, which is unusual. But well done, Graham. I think the basics of biology are starting to kick in. We haven't seen South Africa lose a game of cricket. Mostly because our women keep beating Pakistan, which is fantastic. And we have had this great sense of excitement because our men are about to play. But let's start with this time last week, we were about to look at what we thought was possibly going to be, at the very best, a draw, possibly a victory for Australia. It wasn't. Yes, India won, but far more importantly, Alan Committie, Australia lost.
I don't celebrate an Indian victory. I celebrate a loss for Australia. I could watch that final day over and over and over again, and I have. I've put it on repeat. I have it on all my TVs. I put it on my iPad. I put it on my cell phone. I have it in my car. I put it as an iPod, as a podcast. I just listen to it over and over again, and it brings me undeniable delight.
And you almost feel, in as much as it is possible to, just that tiny sliver of sympathy for the Australians, because they probably already had the series highlights ready on VHS to go out across Australia in crackling black and white. And then all of a sudden, India, who until not that long ago, basically India travelled away as most of us travelled after a Vindaloo, and yet they've somehow proved they are amazing overseas.
With their C team, a squad of 614 players. And I think one of the great delights when Australia loses, it's not just the team. I always feel like we're also defeating their commentary team because they're all ex-players and they all talk up the game so much. I feel like we're defeating a nation in many ways. It feels like some kind of empiric World War victory, doesn't it?
You almost sense that I'm not sure if Australia has a stock exchange, but maybe the people in the carts in the centre square in Sydney have got a chalkboard, and the price of apples and potatoes and sheep for assorted purposes has just dropped.
You feel like a boomerang, if it was thrown, wouldn't return for the shame that it felt at the loss.
Indeed, indeed. And speaking of boomerangs, must have been slightly awkward if you were the person who invented it and weren't quite sure what was happening. But that is completely peripheral to what we're talking about, which is cricket. Wonderful, wonderful to see India win. But how sad do we feel, Alan? One of our countrymen who was, you almost saw the tears. It was either tears or sweat coming down his cheeks as his increasingly tight shorts wrapped around a body that was just absolutely distraught. Poor Mickey Arthur, as Sri Lanka should have levelled the series comfortably and instead give a victory to the other team we love seeing lose.
Now, some of the viewers out there might know that I played for a Westerford cricket side. I say cricket side as if it was true. But I would like to say that Mickey Arthur's Sri Lankan side at the moment kind of putting up the same batting ability. I mean, certainly in the bowling, they're fine. They're holding their own. But the batting is appalling. And to watch Mickey's little expressive face live through that drama, live through the sorrow. And as you say, the pants getting tighter and tighter. You could feel it. You get what you reap what you sow, I think is one of the famous sayings I've heard said.
It is enormously distressing. And to lose to a team that is effectively captained by Ellen DeGeneres is enormously dispiriting. But well done, England. And now they don't take on England. Subcontinental cricket, very important for us tonight. We're going to talk about it in just a moment with our extremely special guest. I'm very excited to see him. But before we do that, his old teammates are getting ready to go. We spoke last week about how they'd been conned into going on a trip to the Seychelles and then left on the plane so they could fly to Karachi and go and spend 9 weeks in a 14-square-foot hotel room with no Wi-Fi and no air conditioning. But that is where they find themselves tomorrow, South Africa versus Pakistan. And I think you'll know this better than me because you're the Andrew Sampson of lightly comedic cricket statistics. This could be the first team to go to Pakistan since teams stopped going to Pakistan.
I think that's true, isn't it? And I think that, and it's is it 9 years or 12 years? It's a fair amount.
A number. There is definitely a number.
there's a number involved. And I'll tell you the other number that's important is what time are we going to have to get up tomorrow morning to watch first delivery.
But yet I love that. I love setting the alarm, feeling the pillow or possibly slightly heavier object, maybe a lamp or a small child, against the side of the head for my wife as my alarm goes, and I crawl out of bed to go and watch Dean Elgar get a third ball duck.
Oh, there's nothing better than it. And I mean, that must take you back to the memories of, for example, us playing Perth, playing Sydney test matches when you'd wake up at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and then watch us having built up, and you'd watch the build up, wouldn't you? You'd watch 45 minutes of Mark Taylor telling us this and that, and then invariably an opener going out in the first over, and then you just go back to sleep miserable, dreaming terrible, terrible dreams. That's what we have to look forward to tomorrow.
And yet we loved it. We loved it.
We love every moment.
All right. Well, there's a magic.
I've got to say quickly, one of my greatest memories was Fanie de Villiers, of course, winning us that test match. And it happened on my birthday, the 6th of January. Remember the final wicket, he caught and bowled, and he kind of stood arms akimbo. I think that was his name. And it was the scenes. And I remember my dad and I, that must have been about 5:30 in the morning. My dad was so excited. He tried to open the curtains to scream it to the neighborhood, and did it too violently and brought down the whole curtain rail, the curtains on top of it, and bits of plaster. So that was the end of his relationship with my mom for about 2 weeks. And yet it was worth it for a test victory. Of course it was.
Well, an inspiring precursor to his son bringing down the house in performances around the world on a regular basis. Test cricket is so exciting to both of us. We're deeply passionate about it, and it leads very nicely into our incredibly special guest tonight. But before we get to our special guest, by some distance, the highlight on this very show, the one that millions, well, at least some people around the world tune into on an almost regular, if not very often basis, is Alan's Lost Legends.
That's exactly right. Alan's Lost Legends. This is a segment in which I remind our the single viewer who is watching, that there are cricketers out there that sometimes fall out of our memory. And they are no Lee Barnard. Lee Barnard, of course, my personal hero from the 80s and 90s. And I thought back, this gentleman occurred to me late yesterday evening. I can't tell you under exact circumstances, but I just turned over on my right side, and this name came to me, and I don't know if you'll know him, Dan. Flum Michal. He played for what was then Eastern Province. There he is. There's Flum Michal, our very own, if you will, Ben Stokes. Flum, of course, in Afrikaans is Flame Michal, because of his red hair. You can see the moustache. He had that 80s aggressive look, didn't he? In fact, that photograph is not blurry. That is what he looked like in real life. Flum Michal. And the reason I remember Flum Michal is because the 1989 Currie Cup final was between Transvaal, who I supported, what was then Transvaal, and Eastern Province. And Flum Michal scored a lot of runs in the first innings, setting up an Eastern Province victory, and took a great catch at short leg. This is the things that stay in my memory. I can't remember how to access my online banking, but I can remember the brilliance and the genius that was Flum Michal. A big shout out to you, Mr. Michal, wherever you are. Flum, flame on, as they say in the Fantastic Four. He's no Lee Barnard, but he was Flum Michal.
Oh, there we go. I'm going to offer no judgment on the fact that Alan may or may not have made up this cricketer, and that he sounds like he possibly played third division football in Belgium. But Flum Michal, it actually helps if you're trying to get that.
Is his Dutch brother-in-law, lesbian, Flem Michal. But Flum Michal, I miss him. I really do. I'll just quickly point out, because we've got to get our guest on, but Flum Michal did take a wicket, and he bowled as many of our spin bowlers back in the 80s and 90s, or 1980s and 90s, but there was no turn. They had the same turning capabilities as the spinning top in a Christmas cracker. And Tim Shaw had taken a number of wickets, and Flum Michal actually grabbed a wicket as well. So that'll tell you everything about the Transvaal of that era.
Oh, there we go. Flem Michal, an early prototype of Paul Harris. And we celebrate his, if not greatness, then certainly his presence here tonight. The only known photograph we have of him. Right, so Alan, I know we were very excited because we had confirmed for tonight Kevin Peterson. Kevin Peterson was on the show with us, and then earlier this afternoon, I get a phone call. Forget Kevin Peterson. We've gone way better. We've gone so much better. We have ramped over Kevin Peterson and his assortment of questionable and largely self-inflicted hairstyles. We have a brand new superstar on the second episode of Two Full Tosses, brought to you by the Trevor Quirk Center for Bikram Yoga. It is Mr. Vernon Philander.
Dan Philander.
Good evening, gentlemen. How are we?
Oh, so I have to say, just so people know, and it's important we get the technical side right, this camera is actually on an Sapphire flight going over Durban, just so we can get Vernon's shoulders and guns into almost one photo. We can't quite get all of it. We want to talk to you about cricket, Vernon. We're very excited, but first we have to do something far more important, because yes, you were quite good at cricket. We realize this, we understand it, but it's very much your second sport. Let's go with your top sport. Let's go with today. I think we've got the picture of it. Vernon Philander, his first ever hole-in-one earlier today. Vernon, congratulations.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. What a feeling, eh? Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that you always look forward to happen in a golf course, and yeah, finally happened after a couple of years of golf.
So set the scene. Go on. You've obviously been talking about it all day. What happened? How did it happen?
Yeah, I think my caddy was more excited than what I was. So it was on the 12th at Mount Edscombe. I don't know how many of you guys have played Mount Edscombe. It was so the hole was tucked, on the left-hand side, just behind the bunker, and a little bit into the wind, 156 meters it was, and I took out a 7-iron, regular flex though, by the way. And yeah, I had to just slow down the swing a little bit, and yeah, geez, in it went. I never saw it go in the hole, and I always felt that you know what, it's probably close, and as we came around the bend and I didn't see a ball in the green, I knew it was it happened to be the one.
That's fantastic.
So I need to know about the reaction here, because I've never had a hole-in-one, as exceptional a golfer as I am, and I've only ever seen one. And I was in a 4-ball with a guy I think you might have heard of, a guy called Jacques Callis. Now, when Jacques could score 100, and he'd knock it to mid-wicket, take the single to get to his 100, and he'd look like he'd just been phoned by his neighbour to say that his power had been cut off. There was absolutely zero interest in the fact that he just scored 100. But when he got his first hole-in-one, I honestly thought that he and his partner were going to conceive a small child. They were that excited together. You were quite cool when you got, 5 wickets, knocking over Australia, just generally being awesome. How did you respond when you realised you'd got the hole-in-one?
And again, my partner that played with me, he was probably more excited than I was. Him and the caddy were high-fiving each other, and I walked up to the hole, still thinking the ball probably went past the hole over the back of the green. And obviously, eventually, the two of them, after seeing them hugging each other and high-fiving each other, I obviously realized the ball was in the hole. So yeah, I mean, we all play cricket, and you obviously get to celebrate your wickets and your victories. But I think that's always a special feeling, sinking that one on a golf course.
So with 1 at 12, what did you shoot today?
I shot a 71.
Whoa,
yeah, which wasn't too bad with my regular flex rented golf clubs.
Why were you wasting your time with cricket, Philander? Play golf.
Hey, you know what? Some of us realize these things later on in life. Right? It's a bit like you. I see you started working for Momentum as well with your Momentum jacket there. So.
Well, this is a wonderful jacket. This is a guy called Dani van der Berg, a lovely guy, but the worst business plan ever. He made 100,000 blazers, and then instead of selling them, just gave them away. So, Dani, if you're watching, thank you. It fits really nicely. Hole-in-one, amazing achievement. Let's bring up the comparison. We've got a rather nice photo of a scoreboard that I think we can bring up here. That reminds us of a rather good day. Australia 47 all out. Was that better or worse than getting a hole-in-one, Vernon Philander?
Yeah, that was a whole lot better, to be quite honest with you. Especially taking the circumstance and the game situation that we found ourselves in. I remember we were on our back for we got bowled out for 98, I think it was, in the first innings, and Australia obviously had quite a substantial lead. And I remember saying to Dale, what sort of score is going to bring us back into the game? And to be quite honest with you, I was thinking, if you can bowl them out for 200, it would give them a lead of probably 360, 270, which was probably being realistic. But yeah, let alone 47 all out. They were 21 for 9 at one stage, and I really thought we were going to bowl them out for 21 at one stage, but they got a little bit of a partnership with Nathan Lyon. But I'll tell you what, there's no greater feeling than seeing those Australians sink.
Absolutely. I got to tell you, I was there. I watched that from Newlands. I haven't missed a day at the New Year's Test match in 20 odd years. And you're absolutely right, because you had them 20 odd for 9. So I had that strange position of being angry with you guys for that period of that short partnership. And friends of mine going, why are you upset? And I'm going, why can't they pull them? And they've got them for 21 for 9. So that's African fan. Even at your best, it's not good enough for us.
Absolutely. I was distraughted with that last partnership there, although it only were 26 or whatever it was. But I've got to tell you guys a story. So we obviously got rolled for 98, and I walked off to fine leg. And David Boone's got his own tour group over here in South Africa. And I happened to be on the boundary warming up, to get ready to bowl. And one of these Australian guys got up and he says, "Hey mate, you're pretty F now, aren't you?" And I remember in 21 for 9, I walked back at him and I didn't say a word. And one of his own mates says, "Oh mate, you better fucking shut up."
Love it.
I think it was one of those test matches that you'll never be able to forget. It was just such a wonderful feeling to turn the game, to come from behind, and to win a game in that fashion was unbelievable.
Why do you think we have it over Australia? I mean, listen, we've struggled with them at home, but in Australia, and we've just seen India. One of the things that irritated me, and no doubt you too, Dan, was the fact that Shane Warne on 4 or 5 occasions during that last day where India were beating Australia, kept saying this is the first time this has happened in ages, and forgot completely how we have beaten Australia in the last 3 series.
Relentlessly.
Exactly. What do we have in Australia?
I think Australia is probably one of the toughest places to tour, to be quite honest with you, as a cricketer. And they've almost over the years become this high school bully team, so they would like to get onto the front foot and then just dominate you from there onwards. And obviously, the crowd plays a massive part as well. They get in on the wagon, they get in on the act, and it's so tough as a player to stay focused. But I think one thing that South Africa's always had is, they man up, they front up to the challenge. And I think that's something that Australians absolutely hate, is when you give them their own medicine. You've got 1 or 2 guys that can actually front up against, some of the quick bowlers, which they like to use to intimidate opposition. And I think, that's something South Africans has always done wonderfully well, is that we front it up, to the challenge and not just back off and let them really bully you in many ways.
Well, we've been able to take them on largely thanks to people like yourself. And Alan, Vernon, if you'll just give me a moment. So here we have, based on your successes, Vernon, we've got a highlights reel of all the bad deliveries you ever bowled to Australia. So just hold on a moment. And there we go. I hope you enjoyed that. That was the highlights of Vern's bad deliveries to Australia. All of them in one particular selection. And beating Australia was a major highlight. And we've got another highlight from your career, which I'd like to bring up. And I think Ronaldo, our producer, has this particular highlight. This was one of the greatest days of your life by some distance. And let's just bring this in, Ronaldo, if you will. So there we go. What was it like driving that car? What did it feel like? What was the engine like? The acceleration? Just talk to us about just that amazing day driving that car.
Are we talking about before 12 at night or after 12 at night? I can tell it was one hell of a feeling. I always love sports cars, and I mean that little bad boy there was right up my alley. But I enjoyed the ride after 12 in the morning a lot more.
There's so many jokes here that present themselves. We'll just walk away from them.
Yeah,
we should have started this interview by checking with you, because is it Philander or Philander? Or Philander or Philander, because I've heard every pronunciation. Just give it to us straight now. How do we want to say your name?
I've heard Philander as well. So
I'm sure you have.
Yeah, so
Philander.
Yeah. Silent 8.
Yeah.
No, so Philander. That's how I grew up.
So that would be, I'd imagine, the Ravensmead pronunciation. Yeah. Are you the most famous person from Ravensmead ever?
I don't think so. I think the gangsters are a lot more famous than I am. And that's being honest. Yeah, look, I'd like to believe that I've painted my name on the Ravensmead Hall somehow. But yeah, there's a few more famous boys around Ravensmead.
So Alan and I are thinking, this is our second episode already, so we need to do some celebration. And we thought about, maybe going to taking a test at Lords or maybe some time in the Caribbean. Then we thought, well, no, you know what? We'll do a trip to Ravensmead instead. If we're going to Ravensmead, what would be the highlights? Talk us through the upmarket tourist guide to Central Ravensmead.
There's plenty of to Ravensmead. First of all, you guys have got the perfect attire because there's plenty of churches in Ravensmead. Then, I think, and then we've got the famous library. And then I think the most famous part for me was the sports field. Florida Park, which happened to be the B field for Western Province Rugby for many years. And then obviously the cricket side of it, which saw me on many occasions. One of the amazing things now actually in Ravensmead, to try and uplift the community again. It has gone backwards, to be quite honest, and quite sadly so. But yeah, we're doing our best to make sure that we get it back on the map, and hopefully we'll get a lot more people from there being role models for the next generation coming from that sort of communities.
Well, they got a terrific role model. Alan, what is your favourite Vernon Philander moment? Was it that test at Newlands?
I would probably, I was going to say, you excelled at Newlands. You really loved playing at your home ground, and it felt like you always brought your A game to that particular stadium. I can't think of a bad game that you played there. What was it like? You did have, on occasion, maybe this is, we're far enough away, so I can say this. There were occasions that you gave off a kind of Brian McMillan, Jacques Pallas bowling enthusiasm vibe. Like you would be like, no, not right now. I wouldn't obviously if it was going well, it was going very well. But there were one or two times where the captain would look at you and you'd be looking at the grass with incredible, as if it was the Ravensmead Library. Is that fair enough to say? Were you an enthusiastic bowler all the time, or day in, day out, same at the beginning of the day, at the end of the day? Or was it also something, we're going to have to do this, this is the hard slog now?
You know what? As we all bowlers would know, there comes a time of the day where it doesn't quite go your way, or you don't quite feel like bowling that spell. And that's the time when the advertising board becomes the most interesting part of that stadium.
Correct. Exactly.
And the captain is looking at you, but I tell you what, there is writing on that advertising board which you've never seen before. And yeah, so you know what, it's a fast bowlers thing. Every now and again you go through a slot where you maybe just feel everything is not quite going yet. So you want to give yourself an extra couple of overs, especially when you have 3 seamers and 1 spinner, and the 1 spinner gets put under the pump, and your captain starts looking around after you've just finished your 7-over spell to come back for another quick spell. So yeah, those sort of things are always tricky. But yeah, like I said, that advertising board do become a lot more interesting.
How you missed Plum Michal.
Miguel.
We've got some very good news for you. The very good news for us was that we managed to bump Kevin Peterson and bring you on instead, which was a big step up. But we've also got a rather special guest who I know Alan Committie is going to go and bring on. So Alan, we'll see you shortly. While Alan goes to get his guest, what we do on this show, and we've done it every single show so far, which means both of them, is the very special quiz. And in this case, as I find it, it is the Great Vernon Philander quiz. So I've got 5 questions for you, all around Vernon Philander. And I think last week we had Chris Morris on the show last week, and Chris Morris got 4 out of 5. So it was a solid start for someone who's not terribly used to performing well on a public platform. So let's give you a crack. Are you ready for the Great Vernon Philander quiz, Vernon Philander?
Let's give it a go. See what it is about Vernon Philander.
All right. Well, your very first question then. Your debut test against Australia, you were obviously leading the bowling charge. Graham Smith was one of the opening batsmen. Who was the other opening batsman in that debut test of yours?
Vera Peterson.
Alvaro Peterson is not correct. It was Jacques Rudolph.
No, it wasn't.
According to Crick Info, it was Jacques Rudolph.
No, it wasn't. It was Vera Peterson because he was still in the gully. But anyway, let's go.
All right. Okay, well, we'll give it to you. We'll blame Crick Info, so this is all their fault. We're on a downhill slope from here. Your very last one-day international. You played nowhere near enough one-day internationals for my liking, but you played, I think, about 30. 2015 versus New Zealand. You opened the bowling with which bowler?
That would be with, I think it was Morne. No. Yeah, it was Morne Morkel.
It was Aaron Pangiso.
No, he never played in the World Cup.
No, you're fine. Jesus, Crick Info is being very difficult. Okay, let's count it 2 for us. Let's scrap both of those, and we need to work harder on these. Here's a photo of a former teammate of yours. Can you tell us who this former teammate is?
Who's that?
Well, I'm asking you. You played with him. Don't let the colours fool you. You didn't play with him for the West Indies, but you played with him for somebody else. Who might that be?
Jeez, that looks like Tommy Cholakile.
I'm not sure Tommy ever played for the West Indies. No, that was when you played for the Jamaica Tullers, and that was Carlton Bohr, your wicket-keeper batsman.
Jeez, now we're going back in days here. Eh? But anyway.
Really a close Facebook friend of yours?
Probably on LinkedIn somewhere.
Oh dear. All right, one last question. 2 last questions. You when you played your very first test match, you were LBW for a duck. Who was the bowler?
Jeez, that's a good question. I think it was Shane Watson.
Definitely the right country, not the right bowler. It was actually Nathan Lyon. Nathan Lyon had you LBW. Do you remember it? Not remotely.
Nathan Lyon never bowled in at first innings.
Oh dear. All right, and then your very last question. You are there's a bit of a split here amongst the South African public, and we did an extensive poll of Alan's next door neighbour and the gardener who works across the road from us as to who the most famous Vernon in South Africa is. Now, I'd say Vernon Philander. Most of my friends would, but I'd like to know who's your chief contender. Here's the photograph. Who is the other most famous Vernon in South Africa? Does he ring a bell?
Dear. No, we'll stick to Vernon Philander.
All right, so that would have been Vernon. And what a wonderful South African pin-up he is. All right, well, depending on Crick Info or Vernon, you've either got 2 or 4 out of 5. We'll go and do some research and post the results retrospectively. Before we say goodbye to you and let you go and finish off your champagne celebrations for your hole-in-one, we have an occasional guest on Two Full Tossers, and he was here with us last week. He's here again this week, so I'd like to hand over to him. He's a good friend of mine. He's a fabulous member of the cricket community. He is the Honorary Life Vice President of the North Griqualand Umpires and Scorers Association. Vernon, please say a very good evening to meneer Johan van der Walt.
Yeah, I can't even praat. I'm talking to Vernon. Oh, goeienaand. Baie dankie. Lovely to see for yourself here, Vernon. Beautiful. Thank you for dressing up, man. Football. You know, a lot of people just take the show for nothing. They say it's worth nothing, but you have really, jy's frisch gebou. You are freshly built. You've obviously taken a bit of effort. You've cut your hair nice as well, which is very nice. Kyk, ek is nou deel van die skeieregtersorganisasie. I am an umpire, and I wanted to know, did you have a favorite umpire when you were playing that you used to enjoy bowling in front of? An umpire.
No, absolutely. We all have favorite umpires, the ones that you've got in your pocket.
That's right. The ones that you could hold and control and manipulate. And what was that person for you? Who was that for you? Was it Cyril Moot?
No, I always had fun with Dennis Smith on the field. He's an ex-player and he's now an umpire. You'd probably know him.
I do. Yeah, very nice guy, very nice. And slightly blind, which helps as well, I think.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Only have to make the noise when he gives it out.
That's it. It's just about the noise. Yeah, prachtig. Explanate for the viewers out there. But this is now. Look, I'm a smart fellow, as you can see. But ek wil verstaan, how do you get for yourself the reverse swang on the ball? How do you get the? But now explain it simply. Don't get into the complicated. In simple Louis man's terms, for me, how will you get a ball to reverse the swang?
The reverse swing is quite easy. You get yellow sandpaper and you scuff up the one side and it will go.
Yes, you see, that is why you are a level above the others. Prachtig, dis mooi. You understand everything about everything. And now we ask you 10 quick questions. You just give an answer. You don't explain why you are choosing that answer. We're just learning from you quickly. Are you ready? You got one.
Okay.
All right. Chicken or beef?
Chicken.
Liverpool or Arsenal?
Neither.
No, you must choose for yourself one. You must.
Arsenal.
Arsenal, that's a bad choice. France or Italy?
Italy.
BMW or Audi?
Audi.
Peter Kirsten or Gary Kirsten?
Peter Kirsten.
Ooh, Zimbabwe or Bangladesh?
Zimbabwe.
LBW or Bold?
Bolt.
Lords of Nieuweland?
Nieuweland.
Ja, dit is die regte antwoord. Mooi. Running from square fine leg to square fine leg at the Gabba, or playing silly point to Paul Adams?
No, running from square leg to square leg.
Ek stem saam. And finally for you, so you've done so well, yeah. Mark Lottering of Joe Barber?
Joe Barber.
Joe Barber, mooi gedaan. Yes, this has been an honor. Hey, it really have. You have been as accurate as you have been in your bowling career. It's a great honor. I've got to, kom nou. I've got to go. I can't be talking all this nonsense for you, but baie dankie, né?
Cheers. Cheers, Johan.
There we go. Umpire Johan van der Walt with some very insightful views. Before we let you go to that celebration, kicks off tomorrow. Pakistan versus South Africa. First time we're back in that part of the world for a long time. Are you confident? Are you nervous? Are you excited? How are you feeling about the team, Vernon?
Yeah, I think it's always excited. I think, we haven't toured Pakistan in 14 years. So I think, the team would go there and, the guys, I mean, there will be nerves, obviously. Subcontinent tour. Normally, the wickets are pretty good. So I think from a batting point of view, I think we should put up a good front. I think the only challenge will probably be in our bowling department. I think we'll probably play 2 spinners, if not more. Knowing the conditions over there. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they go, game plans, etc. But I think it's just good to see Test cricket back in action, I think it's just good to see cricket back in action, as a whole. So, Pakistan, always an interesting place to tour. They've got enough security guards, so they should be playing a safe brand of cricket. I think, we're looking forward to the guys, performing well. But like I said, Pakistan, it's a beautiful country. I mean, for those of you that have been there, it's a wonderful country to tour. I think all things aside, tomorrow's back to business. Probably evens between the 2 squads. I've got to be honest about it.
18 holes of golf with a hole-in-one and then back to the hotel for a surreptitious cold beer that we won't tell anybody about, or staying in a Pakistani hotel room of 14 square feet for 2 weeks eating Pizza Hut. Which one would you choose?
I think Paul Valley is calling my name out at 18 holes of golf. Any given day.
Oh dear. Vernon Philander, I think I can safely say on behalf of myself and Alan Committie, you are our all-time favourite Ravensmead fast bowling all-rounder ever. And we say that honestly and with absolutely no understatement. and more importantly, most honoured to have had you on Two Full Tosses tonight, brought to you by the Trevor Quirk Centre for Bikram Yoga. And Alan Committie, what a great honour to have the fabulous Vernon Philander and his shoulders and his guns on the same show tonight.
He's upped the testosterone levels in this little studio of ours threefold. Honestly, it's been great. And you're a star, so you've brought us great pleasure on and off the cricket field, mostly on. The off thing we can't talk about anymore. It's sub judice, I think is the Latin term. But what a pleasure. Thank you.
Vernon Philander, have a fabulous evening, and we look forward to seeing you on the golf course again soon for more holes in one.
Cheers, guys. Thanks a lot for having me.
So there we go. This has been Two Full Tosses with myself, Dan Nicholl, and Alan Committie, brought to you by the Trevor Quirk Centre for Bikram Yoga. And we look forward to seeing you back again next week when we might have Kevin Peterson, but hopefully we'll have somebody far more famous. Good night.
Good night.